How are we doing, folks? Moose here, your host. Welcome back to your Pitt Panthers football dynasty on NCAA 14, year 2016. It's time for our weekly recap show around the NCAA for week 1, and we'll take a look here at the biggest stories from around the NCAA. Of course, LSU took on TCU. We're going to take a look at that. Florida will be going on to take on Toledo coming up. Georgia and Ole Miss was a fantastic matchup that we'll recap here for you. Same with Notre Dame and Temple, as well as Washington State, USC about to play this week, following a USC interesting matchup, as well as Auburn, Washington State matchup last week, as well as an Alabama, Virginia Tech matchup. So some great matchups to go over, some great matchups here coming up that we're going to recap. And one of the biggest was number 20 USC going down to Hawaii. Of course, a fantastic passing attack that Hawaii is known for, and they come away with an unbelievable upset of the Trojans. Sam Darnold with a 3-touchdown pass performance for USC, but no match for Hawaii, I'll tell you what. And then another shocking upset, Western Michigan, the Broncos knock off in-state rival Michigan State. They put them to the absolute just torch. Fantastic performance from the quarterback Zarrell to give them a victory. And then, of course, Georgia coming with a fantastic victory. Nick Chubb, the absolute star. I think he ran for 168 in this game. 84-yard touchdown run in a blowout by Georgia against number 11 Ole Miss. Probably one of the biggest games of the week. Oklahoma State, number 21, does go down to Mississippi State in a very tight contest. A late third-quarter touchdown gives Mississippi State the win there. Notre Dame barely escapes against Temple. The Philadelphia squad nearly puts away Notre Dame, but Yoon makes a field goal with 6 seconds left in the game to put Notre Dame back in front. Bama really struggled. Jalen Hurts had a horrible performance. I think 13 for 32 passing. But the defense of Alabama, is just something that can't be outdone. Virginia Tech only gets 3 points, and Bama still comes away with the win. Washington, behind the strength of quarterback Jake Browning, does beat Boise State 22-10 in a pretty solid victory there. And in our game of the week, LSU and TCU put on an absolute show in the Cowboys Classic. TCU does come with the victory. LSU with a massive charge back with 3 late touchdowns. Geis with a couple of touchdowns for the Tigers, but LSU does come away with the win in this one. A fantastic performance. And then UCLA does beat Nevada. So with those results, players of the week in the NCAA were Demetrius Monday from Kent State, who put on a very solid performance, 2 picks and a sack, while Seth Russell had an absolute blowout against a Division I AA opponent and put up about 400 yards of offense. In the ACC, players of the week, Jordan Whitehead for 9 tackles and a pick in his matchup against Marshall, and then Sean Wilson in a blowout victory for Duke, put up 164 and 3 touchdowns. And that'll lead us into around the ACC. How did the rest of the teams in the ACC do? Obviously, we know about Pitt's 33-16 win over Marshall. North Carolina, unfortunately, I think they were number 20 coming into this matchup, and they lose to Carolina rival South Carolina by a single point. Wake Forest barely escapes a 1AA squad. Miami does dominate Florida Atlantic. NC State escapes Louisiana Tech with a tight victory. Georgia Tech falls to a 1AA squad, unbelievably. And really, they weren't even in the game. It's amazing. Virginia blown out by BYU at home. Syracuse loses to Penn State in a pretty big victory for the Nittany Lions, who will be playing Pitt this week. Boston College wins. Alabama beats Virginia Tech, unfortunately, and Duke puts up a big blowout victory against an FCS squad as well. So with those results, how does the ACC look? Duke, Pitt, and Miami, the only teams in the Coastal to come away with victories. Virginia, Georgia Tech, North Carolina, and Virginia Tech all losing. NC State, BC, and Wake with victories in the ACC Atlantic. But Clemson, Florida State, and Louisville, really the top 3 teams there yet to play. And after looking at the ACC, we're now going to take a look around the NCAA at the top 25, how the top 25 shakes out coming into week number 2 here. Bama stays at the top. Clemson, Oklahoma, Florida State. Ohio State does move up with the LSU loss. They're going to drop all the way to number 11, just 1 spot behind the team to beat them, TCU, which seems like a pretty fair compromise. TCU right ahead of LSU in an unbelievably tight game. But TCU does jump up into the top 10. LSU falls to 11. Of course, number 12, Michigan State's going to drop entirely after that huge loss. So Washington jumps up. Georgia with a big victory over Ole Miss jumps up. Houston, UCLA, Iowa, Louisville jumps up despite not even playing. Ole Miss falls to number 18, which is Georgia's last location after losing to Georgia, so they do drop a few spots. Baylor jumps up 4 spots after a convincing victory. Oregon's up 4 spots. Florida's up 4 spots. And then a few teams are going to join the ranks of the top 25. Miami, Mississippi State, who beat number 21 Oklahoma State, Texas A&M, and Utah into the top 25, which means dropping out were Michigan State, USC, Oklahoma State, and North Carolina. So that's how the top 25 shakes down. Obviously, Oklahoma State, Michigan State, North Carolina, all right in the certificate still, so they might be back in the top 25 in the coming weeks. But now into week 2, the big matchups here. West Virginia taking on Oklahoma. West Virginia is a very, very strong offense, but Oklahoma with a, Baker Mayfield at quarterback, some really solid weapons there. Kirk Herbstreit has them coming away with a victory. One of our games of the week, South Carolina, who just beat North Carolina, taking on Georgia, but behind the strength of Nick Chubb at home, you think there's no way Georgia can lose that one. He's going to put up a ton of yards, and Herbstreit has Georgia coming away with the victory. And then really another one of our games of the week, not a ton of big matchups, but Pitt versus Penn State, the renewal of this rivalry, and it's going to be unbelievable. Of course, Penn State coming off a 48-30 victory against Syracuse, so they're 1-0. Good, strong performance. McSorley with a few touchdown passes. You saw some good running from Barkley, who we know is just a fantastic talent. They spread the ball around, so definitely an offense that has multi-facets that they'll be able to attack you in a number of different ways against a Pitt team that was very solid on defense against Marshall, to be honest. Allowed a couple of big plays, but they did very well. You can see the Penn State rushing attack put up 214, 256 passing. They did give up 429 passing yards to quarterback Eric Dungy of Syracuse, though, so you wonder if Nate Peterman will maybe have an opportunity to try and pass on this defense, but we'll have to see if the Panthers will give him that opportunity. Barkley ran for 108 and a touchdown. Trace McSorley with 11 carries for 50 yards, so you wonder, what they were doing that gave him that much ability to run the ball. Godwin, Gesicki, and Hamilton all with 6 catches, so they definitely like to spread the ball around. And defensively, they got a couple of fantastic linebackers. Sickles at the end as well. 4 tackles for loss and 2 sacks in that matchup, so somebody that the Panthers will have to keep out of their backfield if they want to have a strong performance. There's no doubt about that. And we look through the Penn State 2 deep that they've given us. Trace McSorley's a solid young quarterback, one that they'll have to watch out for, but the impact player is Saquon Barkley. There's no doubt about that. He's an absolute monster. He's one of the best running backs, if not the best, in the NCAA. And Godwin, Hamilton, Black now, all very solid talents that McSorley can utilize, as well as a big tight end in Gesicki. So definitely, if he gets the time and they keep Juan Price out of the backfield, it could be the ability for McSorley to put up some big numbers. Sickles is really the key in the D-line. Bell, Kabinda, some fantastic linebackers. So there's no doubt about that. So Penn State has a fantastic defense, one that will look to nullify this Panthers attack that was pretty dynamic against Marshall. There's no doubt a couple of bad turnovers, but otherwise they looked like they could really make an impact as we move forward. So definitely some stuff the Panthers will want to pay attention to there. But like we mentioned, the key, Saquon Barkley, 108 yards rushing in the last matchup. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's a return man for them as well. So it's definitely something that could play an impact. And as we compare the two teams, we take a look. The Panthers, 33 points a game, put up 430 yards. Very balanced offense, much like Penn State's was in the last matchup. But the Panthers' defense looked very stout, although you could argue Marshall was maybe a little tougher than Syracuse, so we'll have to see. And with that, we're going to go into our prediction for this matchup. And we predict that because they're at home, we have Pitt coming away with the victory against their arch rival Penn State Nittany Lions in the renewal of this rivalry for the first time in 16 years. It's amazing to pick up where they left off with a 27-24 victory. We think the Panthers will have just enough to get things done here against the Nittany Lions, especially with the home crowd backing them. Should be an absolutely massive game at Heinz Field, and we hope to see you there. So as always, let me know who you think is going to win this Pitt-Penn State matchup in the comments, what you thought of the episode, and we'll see you next one. Take care. Bye-bye.